There's very little I hate more in the world than the sound of somebody whistling. And I'm not particularly good at whistling and I don't do it particularly often, but I hate this sound so much that even when I'm sort of like absently whistling, I hate the sound coming from myself. So I will stop and we are live here to chat about stuff way cooler than whistling. We're here to chat about some of our favorite TV moments from this week, and I'm trying to think if any obnoxious sounds were involved in any of them, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say no, but Kate, let me know if I'm forgetting any, because the
I mean,
shows
I
we're
can't think of any.
yeah. The shows we're talking about in particular this week are Only Murders in the Building, which Kate marathoned the entire thing today. I'm not quite
I
caught up.
personally can't
I've
think of.
seen the first three episodes. And we're also going to be talking about the latest episode of Marvel's What If, which I'm very excited to chat about because we have an appearance from one Miss Wanda within it. And we'll touch base on a couple other shows such as Supergirl and Stargirl, which were airing some new and particularly interesting episodes this week. Apologies if words are not working. There's a exhaustion induced disconnect between my mouth and my brain, so we're gonna get as many brain cells as I can possibly muster, but I cannot promise it'll be a lot. So with that, I turn it over to Kate to say hi and tell us what news we have this week, or should I say the past 2 weeks?
So, we don't have that much news. Just a reminder that Dragon Con was this weekend, so we have plenty of uh, fun memories from that. Um, a couple of shows that I have either mentioned before or have found out about since the last time we spoke was Wheel of Time is going to be on Amazon Prime, and that's coming out in November of this year. Previously, I talked about Ghosts, which is like a dark comedy that's going to be on CBS, and that's going to be out on October 7th.
Mm-hmm.
And I also saw today that there are a lot of positive reviews coming out about the movie Spencer, and we got a release date of November 5th.
I am so excited about the movie Spencer, and I've seen a lot of positive reviews about that and about Kristen Stewart's wonderful looks at the Venice Film Festival, I believe it was recently. She looked stunning. I'm so excited to see her in this movie. Stormy in the chat says hi. Carrie says good evening, ladies. Hope everyone is fantastic. Carrie, I think we are doing pretty fantastic. We are, as Kate mentioned, still exhausted from the weekend. Both of us were at Dragon Con this weekend. It was very fun. I'm personally recovering from a lot of lack of sleep. I am a grandma, as you know, so lots of late nights for me. And Kate is recovering from high blood pressure during the WandaVision panels. In which,
It's almost down. It's almost back to normal.
it's almost back to normal. That is great to hear, Kate. Stormy in the chat says Zoe's playlist is also getting a holiday movie. I'm pretty excited about that. I think, we had sort of this like micro surge of some musical TV shows going around there for a while. A lot of them um, got canceled early on or dropped off. And I know Zoe is about to wrap up as well, but I think they will knock a holiday movie out of the park based on the way they do story pacing. They seem to be able to do a good, like, quick, impactful story in the span of, like 1 or 2 hours. So I think that will be good. Well, Kate, we have plenty of stuff to discuss, but we're going to focus in particular on Only Murders in the Building and the Marvel's What If episode for this week. And I want to start off with the Marvel's What If episode for this week because something happened for the first time this week. And that was I actually watched it before you and immediately went over to Kate and I was like, have you watched it yet? Because lo and behold, we had the return of Wanda. So tell me what you thought of this week's What If episode.
I I mean it was really poignant, especially like a lot of the beats that they did have Wanda and Vision in were very much like flips or reinterpretations of events that we've already seen with them before. It was definitely interesting to see arguably one of the most logical characters in the Marvel universe make such an emotional, irrational choice. And like we all, like the characters were like, "This is wrong." He realized it was wrong, but there was a level of even in the rushed 30 minutes that we got this episode, there was a level of humanity that they dealt with that situation where they're like, "Dude, this is wrong," but they also didn't condemn him to be the villain, which is nice. Much like how they shouldn't condemn Wanda to be the villain for her mistakes. I'm just saying, but I I think that's a great if they go that route. That's a great indicator to me that we as a society can hopefully have some empathy for a woman with a broken heart and understand sometimes mistakes happen, uh, and we try to fix them as best we can, and not every hexed city that takes you back into the 50s sitcom should be punished with prison. I mean, do we deserve? Does she has she messed up? Yes. Does
But like,
she
what were the
deserve
people of
anything?
Westview doing
That's to
anyways?
be
Were they
discussed.
that busy? Be honest.
Were they that busy? Yeah. But so what if anything, I have an issue with now, like the first few episodes, it wasn't as bad, but now they are rushing through material in these episodes. They don't.
Kate, I think you cut out. I'm not sure if you cut out just for me or for everybody else. But the last thing I heard Kate say was that she feels they are, with What If, rushing through the plot line. Um, I'm curious, Stormy and Carrie, if you feel the same way. And I'm jumping in the chat here. Stormy says, how is Bucky so hot animated? Give us a Bucky shower scene in live action, please and thank you. I love I love that, Stormy. Bringing the real questions. I would agree with you in that I think he was weirdly hotter animated than he is unanimated. I'm not like a huge Bucky stan. You guys might remember from Captain America, or Falcon and Winter Soldier. It was sort of like he was there, but I didn't really care about him until the potential ship with him and Sarah in Falcon and Winter Soldier. And then I was like, oh, suddenly I do care, right? But yeah, Stormy in the chat says Kate froze. I see that Kate froze. I'm gonna go ahead and pull her off of this and see if
Yeah,
she can
okay.
get
I can hear you again.
unfrozen. Oh, you can hear me again, and you look like you might be unfrozen again. I'm not sure. Um, well, just start talking at some point,
I can
and
hear you.
we'll see if you're unfrozen. All of that to say, yes, I'm not even somebody who thinks that Bucky was hot, but obviously they put some effort into trying to make him hot. Carrie says, in this episode of What If, they combined two of his favorite things, Zombieland and Max Headroom. Also, I love the lineup for this episode was so random. Nice to see characters interact who never really have before. Yeah, I thought that was particularly interesting seeing like you know, Hulk and Vision in the same space getting to interact and actually, strategize together, not necessarily as part of a larger team. I'm always thrilled when I get to see like Wanda and Vision together, obviously. I'm thrilled when, I'm not necessarily thrilled when I see Spider Man because I'm not necessarily the hugest Spider-Man fan, but I'm not surprised when he's there and interacting with somebody. But in this instance in particular, there was quite a variety of what Marvel is trying to make us believe is like a classic hero, which is Spider-Man, and then on the further end of the spectrum, what Marvel is currently treating as a bit of an anti-hero like Wanda, and then, everything in between. And having Vision come in and make the ethical choices that he did was, I thought, really interesting. So, Kate, can you hear me now? And if you can, what did you think of the ethics of this episode? The morals everybody was showing in these kind of odd combinations? I don't think Kate can hear me, but let's check. Okay.
It froze again.
You frozen? Okay. All right. Well, then, let's just do this. We'll throw something else on screen. There we go. Okay. Stormy in the chat says Bucky's reaction after zombie Sam got killed was funny. Yeah, it's very interesting the way they had like I guess I know that, please pardon my cat's tail across the screen. I know that the topic of zombies or the genre of zombies, while obviously like high stakes, because like Vanessa Hudgens' voice, people die or whatever. Like, I understand that this topic is high stakes, but it's typically in a framework where it's kind of treated as like funny or action oriented. So it was interesting seeing them balance that as a genre here, where we had funny kind of ish because it's zombies and also it's animated, but then also super serious, not just because of potential deaths and self-sacrificing heroism, but also the kind of love warping your ethics thing that we saw with Wanda and Vision. So let's try this again. Kate, can you hear me now? And I'll kind of go back to that
I can
original
hear you
question.
now.
What did you think of the ethics of what was going on with all of our heroes, but Wanda and Vision in particular?
I mean, it's questionable ethics, of course. It is him picking the person he loves over everybody else, which is a non-heroic act, but it's a human act. Like, it's something we all can understand, whether it's good or bad. I think so. At Dragon Con, I went to the What If panel, so I got this chance to hear opinions that I actually hadn't considered. I don't know if it's because it's animated or it's just because it's so fast, but Kate, the conspiracy theorist here, did not connect all the dots that are presented to us that I have now fully been made aware of and go, oh, that's what they're doing. So I think they are trying to use this to set up the possibilities of the multiverse and explore the different possibilities and implications before we actually get the full exploration of the multiverse in the movies, which is something interesting that we get. But I think this episode, more than anything, really is starting to show future. It's kind of foreshadowing the events of actual timelines that we're going to be getting in the movies. So whatever that means for Wanda and Vision, I see them in this episode and the decisions that were made a very much mirror image of what happened in WandaVision. He kind of was using a pseudo corpse of her body to play pretend to extend the dream of being in love, and then he had to make a large sacrifice of his own happiness to ultimately save everybody.
So it's showing that he would do for
Um,
her what she did for
as
him.
she did for
And
him.
he was doing it
Yes.
willingly of his own choice. Whereas in WandaVision, as we've discussed, quite a lot of what she was doing, it's really unclear what choice she really had in a lot of it. And once she was aware, obviously she made a different decision. Carrie says Vision's choice made sense for the dynamic he has with Wanda, but it also reminded him of The Walking Dead in early seasons when Herschel was keeping walkers alive in his barn. Yeah, there's always this, I don't know, it's kind of very timely with, the with we're in the pandemic and we've all seen that constant conversation of like, oh, the people who'd make this choice or that choice are the people who'd conceal a zombie bite, and which true. But in the case of Vision's choice, it was just very interesting to see him be a bit tortured over a choice when it seems that due to his makeup, and I'm not a Vision expert, this is essentially the only I guess sacrifice based choice that he would ever really be that tortured over. She's his only real soft spot to that degree. Um, but that was interesting. Did you like seeing her as a zombie, or did you feel pushback against that, thinking you were seeing her as a villain, which I know you don't want?
I mean, I don't think all of the Avengers got turned to zombies, and we excuse all of their faults. So I I'm kind of the opinion that it was very much, another example of her not being in control of her actions and her powers being turned against her to be a tool of evil rather than evil herself. But hey, that's just me.
So, given what you were touching on, which is this sort of theorized combination or layering of all of the what if episodes and certain elements that are getting consistently mentioned as these alternate universes are touched on, what is it that you want to see in the remaining episodes? Or is it episode? Is there one more episode or multiple more? Are there more than
I
six?
think there's 10 total, but I could
10.
be wrong on that one.
Okay. Because I believe
So,
this was episode 5. So we have a few more.
mhm.
What do you want to see from here now that, your Matrix eyes are opened and you know that they're all connected, sort of?
So we actually got less of the Watcher this episode than we did last time, but we also did not get a full roundabout story like we did the other time. So we didn't actually get to see the end of them saving the world. It's just implied. And I think what they're going to start to do is make the stories less and less rounded, start to show how they are starting to combine. My guess is they probably do 2 episodes more of starting new storylines, and then we'll start to see some of the characters and storylines combining and infusing in each other, and interacting, and it had much more to do with the Watcher himself. Um, as we head towards the different movies that are going to be exploring the multiverse and talking about how they interact, and it's going to essentially be kind of like this is an explanation of how different these multiverses can go, and it's a chance to see how that actually changes our favorite characters more than the movies will do. The movies you'll get like a scene with a different Loki, and then you'll get a scene with this like a different Peter, and you'll get a scene with maybe Wanda that never got the Infinity Stone, is just a witch, and all these things. But you will never get like a 30-minute chunk of an explanation about these characters. So it's a great way to give some backstory, give some explanation. I don't necessarily think they're going to use any, if or they might use a few. They might use like Captain Carter or something like that, but they won't use all of the characters that they've created in these alternate timelines. But it's a great way to explain how it works and show the implications of it. And then there's spoiler, there's going to be a season 2 of What If. So by continuing the show of What If, they're basically going to give themselves this opportunity to, after Multiverse of Madness and the other shows or the movies that explore the multiverse, it gives them an opportunity to tell more of the characters that we meet along the way, more of their story. And I don't think that What If is going to be like a crucial watch to understand the movies, but it's going to be kind of like a backstory for people who want more and then to see more of what happens with the characters we get to meet along the way.
And make the ethical choice.
Yeah.
How about that? Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. The volume mic issue was that I muted myself and forgot to unmute myself. So I was saying some really profound things, for a whole 2 minutes.
You
Just
solved world
kidding.
hunger. You made world peace. Nobody will ever know.
I solved all of our problems. Okay, so Carrie, here's what I was saying, and then I want to touch on your question because that's what I was transitioning to. So, what we've talked about many times in the context of not just this TV show, but TV shows in general, is that it allows for more character development when a character is put in the context of a TV show, because not just because of the length of time and there can be more episodes, even in a situation where all of the episodes added up together combined are the same length of time as a movie, we still can digest more character development because it will feel like a longer time because of the span of time between episodes, even when you're releasing it in chunks like Only Murders in the Building or whatever, where it's a few episodes at a time. By having that space, we can step back and theorize, and What If lends itself really well to theorization. That's probably not a word. Is that a word, Kate?
We're gonna pretend like it is. I mean, it has all the principles of being a word, so
Right.
sure, it's a
Linguistically, it
word.
makes so much sense to me. So we're just going to say yes. It lends itself well to fans theorizing between episodes, and you get the chance for the character growth to happen in your mind as well. Now, your question is there supposed to be a connection between all of these episodes? I was not aware. I too was not aware, but this came up in the fan discussion at DragonCon that Kate was referencing. And this is a common theory online, and I'm going to let Kate explain it because I think she has a better handle on this theory than I do. But I get the sense that this is not a theory, that this is actually what they're doing.
I at first did not see the connection. I was just going along with it being episode after episode. I think after the Doctor Strange episode, I was starting to get this inclination that they were doing more with it because of the amount of multiverse and time travel that was in that episode. Then at DragonCon, the panelists brought up how they write a lot of comic book stuff, which I kind of, it flew over my head. I can't really remember that, so I'm not going to touch on that because I'd be wrong. But they did mention that there are details in a lot of the episodes that are carried over, and I hadn't noticed. So there's creatures that are in all the episodes. I think in all the episodes. So like the octopus that Peggy fights in episode 1, that's the most obvious time it's there, but it's been in other episodes as other adversaries. Uh, Also, apparently, you can find the silhouette of the Watcher in every episode at least one point, kind of as he's like overwatching, watching over as a titular or as a like, really important moment happens. Um, and they were talking about how basically that's kind of him being present for all these different, like, oh, what is it called? The fixed points, all the times in that timeline that are always going to happen, being there. So that might be true, that might not be true, that might just be it was a good time for them to put him in the background. But either way, there was also conversation about how the they have similar ideas of asking questions about what could happen and then making resolving that storyline for the first few, and now as it goes on they're more and more open-ended to interpretation. And they're talking about how I don't want to get this wrong, but they were talking about how basically they're all starting to feed into what the comic books do, something about how the Watcher watches over the multiverse and how all these different timelines are branching out into more and more timelines because of all the different actions in the shows. I don't know. Just it's a theory that it's feeding into the multiverse and eventually it's all going to connect because the Watcher's going to make it connect. Because he says that he can't intercede when he very much can. The narrator said very much can intercede, has and will do again.
I'm really excited to see how all of these episodes end up connecting. But from everything I've heard, what Kate mentioned and some other kind of theories on how these timelines are sort of connecting, I think that is where we're going with this. And that's kind of where my question was coming from when I was trying to figure out how many episodes are left this season, because I want to know how much more connected we can get within a single season before we get into season 2. But just as a format, I'm really glad that this format is persisting, because it's certainly working at getting people like me to be a little bit more interested in the Marvel movies, which are otherwise, no offense, very surface level. Not a lot of character development, tons of regression in the cases where you do have character development. And it's one of the reasons why, even though there's sometimes like budget or quality differences, I tend to prefer DC because at least they'll take some risks with characters. So this, I think, is a happy medium for Marvel. And I'll circle back to kind of what we're looking forward to with Marvel if we have time, but I want to give us a chance to dive into our kind of title show of the week, which is Only Murders in the Building, because it's fresh on both of our minds. I watched 2 episodes of it today, episodes 2 and 3, and I'd watched episode 1 last week. And Kate, I believe you marathoned the first 4 or so today. So let's get into that. We've been talking about this show for a while. You had brought it up in a news segment ages ago, and both of us thought it sounded good, but I don't think either of us realized it would be as good as it has been. And it's not just us, there's been crazy positive reception for this show online. So, Stormy, Carrie, and anybody watching live, I want to know what you think of it if you have been watching. But, Kate, kick us off. Did this show surprise you?
It did surprise me. It surprised me how well they sell this dynamic between the three. So if you haven't seen anything about this, it stars Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez. It's an odd mixture of people. It it takes a very interesting approach to a murder mystery as well. I mean, I've seen it before where they have like kind of obsessive people who are interested in crime and like true crime and things like that. But it takes a little bit of a new spin on it, making them really big fans of the specific true crime podcaster. And it makes them believe that they can solve this crime that happens in their building. And it's funny because as the crime happens, they actually get to a chance to meet um, at a restaurant where they all have gone out trying to listen to the podcast, and that's how they kind of bond. And then they come back to the building, finding out about the crime. And the rest of the show is very much an exploration of them coming to trust each other or trust each other even less. Um, you get to learn a bit about each of their backstories kind of incrementally, which is fun. And there's just a lot of really good dark comedy along with a really interesting mystery.
Yeah. Carrie in the chat says he had not even heard of it and wanted to listen to our thoughts and wanted to know where to find it. So it is on Hulu. Um, and as Kate said, it has kind of this odd all-star but odd mixed cast, and their group chemistry, their kind of mystery detective group kind of dynamic that they've got going on is really fantastic. And the vibe or the tone of the show is just very oddly nostalgic for like old mystery books, while also being obviously very cutting edge. It's playing on a current trend, which is true crime murder podcasts. They are creating a true crime murder podcast as this goes along. And what's interesting to me, and again, I haven't seen the latest episodes, episode 4, but one of the things we see in terms of storytelling medium is we see that they're creating this sort of true crime podcast essentially to capitalize off the murder of an unlikable guy in their building. But you also see little bits of them individually, most notably thus far the character that Selena Gomez plays, also recording this story in a different way. We see her recording, like a video, almost like a vlog thing of her talking about her experience in a very different kind of context and tone, in essentially in case she dies next. It is so fascinating the way they play with mixed mediums in this show. You have a title sequence, which is this kind of cutesy children's mystery book style animated thing of the building. You have references to old detective shows, very much like Columbo or Dragnet type of thing, although they don't use those terms. You have references to old Hardy Boys mysteries. You have references to true crime podcasts, to vlogging, it is such an interesting mix of murder mysteries. And I'm just thrilled with every single one of them because everything that they're referencing, they also seem to be hinting at, one of the three characters in the group does like Broadway stage plays as well. So they're probably also going to be referencing murder in that context too. As a fan of all things murder mystery, I guess, I've loved every single reference that they have had so far. And while I guess I'm most interested in the Selena Gomez character thus far, I like all of them. Please pardon my cat walking in front of my camera again. What do you think of the mixed mediums, Kate?
I really like the mixed mediums. I like it sometimes, like when they do emails or like text messages on screen, it gets weird. It's not well done. This show actually does that well too, and they kind of mess with the older two in the group where they are very formal in text. And I mean that's a stereotype, but they handle it pretty well. Where it's both like
They have like
it's
the
a
old guy
stereotype.
signing his texts, which
Yeah, so
is
like it's like
so accurate.
hola or yes, it's like aloha, Mabel, and but then he's like love this, and I don't know if you've seen this one yet, but one of the guys says like this extremely dark and important information, and it's like love or like hugs and kisses, their name or something like that. I can't remember to see what it was, but that one made me laugh. Um, Whereas then like Selena being probably late 20s, early 30s character, she's very much like, you just text. Like, I know it's from you.
Right.
And so it's cheesy, but it's very funny. I like the use of when she's researching, you see her very much take the internet approach. You see a very accurate representation of how much like information you can get off of somebody on the internet versus like the wildly like waste too much information that you would have to be a hacker to actually get versus like I only know their first name. Like it's kind of like a actually pretty decent representation of that. Um, so I agree. I think how they're doing the intertwining, and even to the point of when you get the initial like the intro voiceover that where you're introduced to all the characters, you later find out that that's how they're recording the podcast. Like those are the
Right.
opening lines for that, which was cute. And so I like the how they do that. I actually want to know how you feel about like the motives of all three being in this because I don't know how I can't remember exactly how much you've seen of each of their true rationales for doing this, but they three have very distinct reasons for what they're doing.
And none of them are particularly good. Or so far as we know, none of them are particularly good. All of them have some kind of shady secret that they're hiding, whether it's Broadway guy being wildly in debt and essentially trying to capitalize on a murder for money, or, you know, I'm
I
there's
mean,
I've seen the theory that the murderer is one of the three.
I feel like if the murder is one of the three and it's the one that they're more heavily hinting at, that's too obvious. There's a couple characters that they're heavily hinting did it. That's just too obvious to me, which is probably who it is. But that's fine, I guess. But I like how very much like one of the characters, one of the three main, they're doing this because they want like they are actually more personally invested. They have an interest in the true crime, but there is a personal investment in this actual crime.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then there is, of course, the one that's in debt, and then there's Charles, who is just kind of like washed out in life. He can't seem to get an acting job. He's just kind of lonely, and this really forcing him to like be around people.
And I
He's
think he
kind of got
has
the
like an unhealthy connection to the detective character that he played.
oh yeah,
They're
it's
hinting at
very
that as
much like
well, that he had previously like he one of the two older men, and Charles, I think was his name. You know, I don't remember men's
mhm.
names. He had previously played a detective, and that's like the seminal role that he was known for, but you learn early on that he has woven his own personal life and traumatic aspects of his personal life into that detective character. So I think as much as he it almost seemed to be the least into participating in this whole murder mystery endeavor, it also seems that he's the one that is most personally taking on the identity of detective, because I think he has an unhealthy connection to a past character he played.
Oh yeah. So I mean, he is kind of going through an identity crisis in this, and the healthy benefit is that he is socializing. The unhealthy thing is that it very much is showing how much he like invested his entire identity into this one role that he played years ago.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's also interesting because you also kind of see the three levels of who is actually okay at detective work. So Charles is okay at it. He's decent at it sometimes, but he really kind of just stumbles onto facts. Um, Oliver is really bad at
Yeah.
it, and Selena, or Mabel is her character's name, is really good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and part of that probably is the investment in why they're doing what they're doing. But it is very funny, all these different times where she's in a scene with one of the guys and they're over like over pumping it up. They're like, we have to go search the house for this package. I'll take this side, you take this side, like it's planned out. And she's like, look at your hand. It's on it, you're touching it. You have your hand on the package. Let's go. Kind of thing. That is really, it's a funny element to the dynamic that's really pleasant, because it's not the ew Mary Sue kind of aspect of like she's just good. It's very easy problems that she is solving, but it's showing how much more observant she is than them, and how much more just like socially aware she is than them, which is a it's an interesting advantage that is really highlighted here.
Yeah. And it's something that feels natural to her character. It doesn't feel like they're giving her character superpowers or something like that in order to keep up. She seems reasonably smart, reasonably talented, reasonably, there. She's quite believable. She has a good introduction early on to her character to make her like a unique and recognizable character without her being like, when I first saw the picture that you see on screen right now, so the picture of her, with the bright yellow and the headphones and whatever, I kind of was wondering if she was going to be sort of a manic pixie dream girl character, or
Yes,
the
it gives that impression.
yeah, the token quirky girl or something like that. But when you actually see her character introduced, it's nothing like that at all. She is just very believably a, you know, kind of smart and funny New York girl who's not particularly rich and not particularly superpowered, and, has gone through sort of a series of unfortunate events that has led her to be pretty closely tied to this murder. But we don't see her put up on a pedestal as like a, Eloise or Pollyanna or Manic Pixie Dream Girl. She is she is great. I really, really am enjoying her character. I like the group dynamic. I like the murder mystery aspects, etc. But my interest in her character and the enjoyability of watching her is what's really keeping me with the show.
Well, and what's so great is how well and how they're doing the character development of all the characters. So
Mhm.
they're all on like constantly interweaving and diverging pursuits of details of the murder. Um, Sometimes they're all three together, sometimes it's just one of them finding the details and then in the group text telling the others kind of thing. Um, but they do a great job of slowly revealing different aspects of all their characters. Most of it is like most of the factual details come from her character, Mabel. She has the most, I would say, complicated backstory in relation to the story. And it's easy to see her motives and her kind of uh, guidance in this show, but we also get more of an explanation as to why Charles is so reserved. I don't know if you've seen that part yet, but you start to see his history and what makes him so reserved and like standoffish on people. And you start to see even more details on Oliver and his financial struggle, and why he still continues to make the choices that he makes. Um, and those are kind of structured like mini mysteries. So you get hints and details about these characters, and it's very plainly splayed out that Oliver is in extreme debt. You know that immediately, pretty much. But you don't understand why until like all these hints are dropped, and then you finally are starting to piece together, okay, this is his backstory.
Right. The
Or for
characters
Mabel,
themselves are a mystery.
yes, and I mean, I would say Mabel's the most of a mystery of the group because of her backstory, but it is interesting to see how they are structuring kind of the reveal. It's not fully like flashbacks. You get like little flashbacks here and there, but it's more of just like you don't tell your entire life backstory to somebody the moment you meet them in real life, and it's interesting to see how they're all revealing different parts of their backstory to different people
Right.
in these slow little reveals that is kind of slowly coalescing into a more like solidified picture of their life.
Yeah, they become a more complex character rather than a caricature, which is cool. I do see we only have 9 minutes
Yes.
left, and I want to give us a chance to talk about what else we watched this week, or I guess I should say the past 2 weeks. And I know for us that might be not kind of a lot because both of us were at a con this weekend. But Kate, did you watch anything else this week that you want to talk about?
I mean, I just watched my normal YouTube stuff, so not much TV or movie, and then I started reading Dune.
Mm,
So that's what I'm reading for the next month and a half, or probably not, but I that's what I'm reading.
fun. This week, I watched the latest episodes of Supergirl and Stargirl, which was really fun, especially after talking about both of those this weekend. And one of the things that was interesting about Supergirl this week is we got a continuation of the storyline of Kelly becoming Guardian, which I thought was really fun. Kind of late, better late than never as we are entering the last season. But I really think I do see them doing their best to take some of um, the romance from the comics that would otherwise have gone to Kara and Jimmy and essentially give that to Kara's sister and Jimmy's sister. And I kind of appreciate that. I feel that the show is actually kind of lacking in romance right now. I really want to see Kara be loved. I don't know, call me crazy. Just not by Monel or anybody like Monel, but I just appreciated the kind of the touches of that this week, and they're still doing their typical, here's our social issue of the week that we're going to have Supergirl be a part of, and we're going to be really, really like non-figurative about it, but I like the topic they were talking about this week. I thought it was handled reasonably well for this extremely non-subtle show. So yes, Carrie says he's going to cover his ears if you talk about Stargirl. Watching that tomorrow. Okay, I won't give you any spoilers about Stargirl, Carrie, but let me ask you a question then. I have a one track mind with shows like this. Are there any ships you're rooting for? Because I get the sense that we're getting to the part of the season where we're going to start dabbling in some ships, as you may have seen in some of the preview images that came out for this episode. And I'm just kind of curious what everybody else thinks about that. It's kind of been interesting for me to see that develop when I don't know. I might just be turning into too much of a grandma, but I have a hard time seeing Courtney in like a budding romantic relationship. When I look at her and I'm like, she's 14 or something like that. Well, like I know she's not. She's like 16 or something, but I don't know. Something about it. They all seem too young. Let me know your thoughts. I found myself watching it. It was like watching like a I like the show, but it was like watching, like some sort of like Zoe 101 or like old Disney show where like after 5 billion episodes they get together at like prom. Anyways, I won't give you spoilers about Stargirl, but I am enjoying it. Okay. Well, that covers everything else that we watched this week, unless you want to hear me talk about Bachelor in Paradise, and I know that you don't, or Married at First Sight, both of which I'm also watching, and both of which I tweet about. So if you want to hear my thoughts on that, you can find me on Twitter at Cammien Ray. And if you want to talk about anything that is not garbage, you can find Kate on Twitter, linked in the description below. And that wraps us up for this week. Kate?
I think that's it. Yeah.
I'll talk to you same time, same place next week. Bye.
Bye.